Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
We're glad you're able to join us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Superintendent Smith, Ms. Blair, Mr. Fitzgerald, and Mr. Thompson.
Good morning.
Hi.
And we thank, we know this is kind of impromptu, so we really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much for
Yes.
doing this. It means a lot.
Well, we're one of the
Well,
most
we
important parts of our budget, so.
Are we on camera?
You are.
Yeah.
Getting that time.
Get that tie in there.
So behave.
So, what would you like to tell us about your budget?
Well, I think, I mean, a lot of things, obviously. I guess first we do appreciate the opportunity to be here. I have a number of key points which I would like to roll out maybe as we speak, but I think we do come in knowing, in some ways, I think I want to say our mindset, not speaking for everybody, is that I think we feel some ways the school department's a little bit different than the other departments. Number one, we have the largest budget. I think we're close to almost 50.4%, almost that much of the town's budget. We're the largest landlord in town. I think in some ways we affect the most people in town. You add the kids with the relatives and the parents and the grandparents. So in some ways, we're very different than most of the other departments. So we understand that. So, we're coming in, and I want to compliment Denise Spinard at this point, being very cooperative. We know what you're up against. We know what you're trying to do. We heard what you heard last night.
Yeah.
But I think we're here also to just kind of really try to influence as many people as possible about how important we feel those added positions, especially the SEL, the social emotional teachers, are. And as we speak, I think we have statistics to show you why they're important, why we feel that we need those FTEs, and we can kind of explain our thinking of how we can be creative in helping you reach your goals, and is to reduce that 22.07 figure financially. So we're coming here in a creative, open, cooperative mode
Okay.
to this committee.
Wonderful, thank you. So, your base budget, I certainly heard last night the message that actually the FTEs that you've proposed saves us from placing children out of district when they have special needs. And that's a point well taken.
Can I jump in? I know I'm only ex officio, but
Yes.
it does, but not everything, and I'm an advocate.
Thank you for clarification.
I'm an advocate, believe me, for education. I think that speaks for itself. And I didn't want to jump in last night, but yes, it does. It does help reduce that, but some of the outplacements go to other very complex,
That's right, yes.
Correct.
can be physical needs, it can be learning needs, and all of that does touch social emotional learning. That's intertwined. It's not like DNA, it's all wrapped up together. But it's not exclusively that, and I don't,
That's correct. So we
Right.
do have special ed.
we get that, but
placements.
I'm not sure the public gets that in its entirety. I think they see that one-dimensionally where,
And we are seeing something different this year. Well, it's not just this year. We've been seeing it over the
Of
last
course.
5 years and perhaps.
it's a societal trend.
This social
and-
emotional is very
and
different.
It's
than
very different.
It has been.
And it's not going away. It's just not. The need to address it's not going away.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to. There's just a tag on your
That's
remark.
okay, I was gonna ask if there was any new information about the Chapter 70 money.
The only new information is that the Senate House Ways and Means basically supported the House Ways and Means, which had increased the governor's proposal
Right.
about 20,000 in
Yeah.
terms of what's coming to East Long Meadow. So,
Only 20,000.
what's that?
Only 20,000.
Increase.
Well, I think overall,
Yeah.
the increase was,
Oh, yeah,
848.
The
Yeah,
12
it's
801.
848.
Yeah, okay.
So originally it was 820,000 in the governor's proposal, and it went up to 848,000.
48,000, right,
Okay.
that's correct.
House Ways and Means, and then the Senate Ways and Means left that somewhat unchanged. It didn't,
Okay.
they increased some things, but it didn't impact East Long Meadow's Chapter 70. It left it at that $848,000
$1,000 increase.
Which
Any
is-
anticipation of any change to that, like if they go into conference committee?
I don't believe so,
No?
especially with Governor Baker being right now an advocate not only for education, but also working on that promise bill, which is attempting to look at the funding formula for the state that was put in place back in 1993, and now there are certain pieces of it that are outdated.
Yeah.
One specifically is how they estimate for special education costs.
Okay,
So that's a piece that they're gonna look at. And so there are a couple different drafts of that bill,
yeah,
but I think in the end, there will be a draft that comes together that Governor Baker would support. So I wouldn't see him
yeah.
reversing or the legislature at this point cutting Chapter 70.
Okay. Let's hope not. We'll
Yeah,
take whatever
exactly.
they offer.
Can you remind us, Gordon, and I'm sorry, I should know this, when do you get a sense of what kind of circuit breaker money you get for special education?
So we actually get the official notice somewhere in July and August.
Okay.
But right now, I think they're looking to keep it at 75%.
Right, they always are a little more conservative, like we all are during the budget process, so they'll say more like a 69-70%,
Right.
but it does go up to between that 72 and 75% reimbursement. I believe we're always a year behind with the circuit breaker as far
Right,
as the
yeah.
special ed expenditures. The other component that
The
we want to-
extraordinary. Yeah.
relief is always something else. If we have additional special ed expenditures that weren't expected at the time of the original formula, Dr. Welch submits for that, and those could be additional funds as well, I believe.
So this year, to explain that a little bit further, circuit breaker basically covers costs that we would submit after there's a threshold. So after you've spent about $40,000 on an individual student, you can then submit through the circuit breaker process the additional money, and depending on what the state has funded that program, so let's use 70%, it can go up to 75%. You might get 70% of that money
The
that you
difference.
spent over the 40,000.
But that
But
still
you
is a
get-
good help.
Oh, we wouldn't
It's
be
a
able to-
lifesaver,
We
right.
wouldn't be able to touch it
Right.
without it.
That-
The extraordinary relief, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that helps us fund the out-of-district tuitions,
Right.
Yeah,
quite frankly.
The extraordinary relief is when you've already submitted certain things, but there are unanticipated other supports, and Dr. Welch does this every
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
She goes back through all our claims for circuit breaker
Yeah.
and puts in for extraordinary relief. Most times, they don't reimburse any more than they're already doing through
Yeah.
circuit breaker. This year, however, they reimbursed 52,000 based on some costs that we had already spent in this year's budget.
yeah. Oh, good,
Yeah.
good.
Which is very helpful, because we did end up with two other out-of-district placements that were unanticipated earlier in the year, so.
Yeah,
And to Kathy's point, so the difference is, there are still some students that have needs that eventually we may not be able to meet, and it could be a
Sure.
combination of both learning disabilities, but also certain physical disabilities.
emotional, whatever.
Right, and that was an excellent point when Kathy said it's all intertwined.
Yeah,
What we're seeing with the social emotional piece is at least the sort of the elements of mental health and anxiety that has grown exponentially really across the United States in our student population. If we can provide that support early enough in our schools and sustain it, then we're keeping students functioning at school and supported at school, where we won't hopefully ever have to find a placement, to a school. And these are private schools. I think last night someone talked about public schools. Most of these specialized schools are private schools. One we
Yeah,
use.
I'm sure not for profit either.
Right. So we use Valley West quite frequently for those type of situations.
Yeah.
And what we were noticing, we had started this discussion probably 2 years ago, is our referrals to Valley West had been increasing, and even more specifically, at the middle level.
really?
And so that's where we were able to put a social emotional teacher in place this year, and we're seeing some good numbers. Right now, we have no referrals that we've sent from the middle school, and we're seeing disciplinary situations reduce. We're also seeing suspensions being reduced. And probably most importantly, we're seeing our student assistance meetings increase. And what that means is that not only is our social emotional teacher, our administrators, our adjustment counselor working to support students, they're also consulting and helping teachers build their repertoire of skills. And so a student assistance meeting can come through a variety of means. It can be initiated by a guidance counselor. It can also be initiated by the classroom teacher. And so if you're seeing those increase, we see that as a good thing, because now you have a team problem solving where maybe in the past, teachers weren't sure what to do. You know, they were feeling overwhelmed and, you know, where do I go for support?
Thinking it's probably more of a disciplinary problem than
Correct.
anything else.
Right.
Right.
So I have a question.
Yes. I mean,
It was mentioned last night at the public hearing that by hiring these social and emotional teachers, it would help to reduce, and it sounds like you're seeing somewhat an impact
Right.
there.
Right.
Reduce the likelihood of sending kids out of state and incurring, you know, the much higher cost
Correct.
that's. Are you able to reflect that in your budgeting so that, you know, having the social emotional teachers, can you offset that within your budget by making some assumptions about lower costs so that,
I think
you know, we could
eventually-
somehow absorb that?
You might be able to do that. I don't know that we have the numbers right now to do that. You know, this is all
And
this year.
I think it's more of a long-term strategy.
Right.
We all see
Long-term.
what's going on in the news and what's going on in schools, and so it's a strategy to get to address some of these kids on a personal level, on a regular basis. At Birchland, some of the students are with the SEL teacher there now all day long, or most of their day for all their academics, because they need that one-to-one attention. And so it's not, you know, it's integrated in the education as well. Some kids come and go, and so there's some more seeing of some students than others, but it's really addressing those kids now. It's the front line of the issue. It's addressing those children's needs on a day-to-day basis with an individual who knows those kids on a daily basis too, so.
And I agree with that, so that would be a long-term expectation.
Yeah.
I think the other side of it is that the cost could exponentially increase if not for, because this is, again, I go back to the news and it's becoming more and more common and I don't want to take it to that extreme necessarily, but it's more of an issue now than when we were there. And you spoke about how, you know, they may think it's just a behavioral thing and such, but it's certainly not identified that way now, and there's ways to address it. So we have to address it. We can't put it on our classroom teachers. Our counselors are there, but they're not there on a day-to-day, you know, basis with some of these students. So this is the way that we're going to address it as a district, where we're not in the minority of districts that are doing it. And so the longer we wait, I think it'll be harder to get social emotional teachers as well. So we're trying to address it as a district to be responsible to our students, to our staff, and this is how we feel we can do it.
And as an example, just to say, an out-of-district placement for this type of situation perhaps is about $50,000 for one child. If we were to get a teacher at $60,000, $70,000, it practically pays for, if we were to keep one student in.
Right, but I mean, obviously, these are known and certain costs that we will pay
Right.
versus,
Right.
that sounds good, but it's not in the budget anywhere that we're saving it. That's the only difference.
Mr. Burns, our budget would be much larger if we didn't start already doing this. So what we're talking about, we already have experience, so we brought back our autism program into the system instead of farming kids out. We brought our learning skills program back into the system and our intensive needs program back into the system. So I can't give you an exact number, but we'd be coming with a much larger budget in special education if we did not bring back these programs instead of sending them to LBVC type of programs. So we already have experience doing this. As you can see, our whole dominance in this discussion has been on this SEL teachers, and we're asking for 2. You can see how important it is to us. We also see it as almost a public safety issue, that they are dealing with probably with the more at-risk students who can be prone to the most difficult behaviors. And one thing that I noticed was, when Mr. Smith talked about, is that our disciplinary notes have gone down from 35% Now, what that means is that the building has been disrupted 35% less, the classrooms, the teaching, the learning, has been disrupted 35% less because of this one person, this SEL teacher. And we'd like to replicate that at the Meadowbrook and at the high school.
And really, it would be prudent to have 4 SEL, because we have 5 schools, so we realize that we can't
Yeah.
ask for everything all at once.
Right.
Because we also have the technical specialists as well. If we're gonna go to a one-to-one,
Yeah.
it is imperative that we're using the technology to its fullest. And in order to do that, we need to gap that bridge with the technical specialists who will bring it all together to make sure we're using this investment as well. I know I changed subjects a little bit, but just a little plug on why that's our other interest. Because if we're gonna invest in all this technology, we wanna complete that investment with the technology
I mean,
specialists.
Through the chair,
Yeah.
I have a question. I'd like to reframe this conversation because what we've heard and what I've heard many times is that we're not funding positions. We're giving you money and you're gonna do what you want with it. And you can fund the positions with the monies we give you. So if we're looking at social and emotional teacher and we say, okay, we'll give you the money to fund that.
Then we'll fund a social emotional teacher.
Then that's what you'll use it for, but
Right.
you don't have to. So my
We're telling you
question,
we're going to,
no.
though. We wouldn't take that away. Why
Oh
would
my
we?
God.
I'm just stating fact, through the chair, please. So, the conversation goes that in the discussion that was taking place outside of this meeting, there was a discussion about, if you gave us 100,000 with the chapter 70 money, we could fund the positions. And you were willing to give away something else. And,
I'm not aware of
I'm
those
not-
conversations.
What are we
so
giving
I-
away? What do we
Well, I
want?
think you
through the chair, please.
I don't,
We can't ask questions, though.
No, through the chair, please. Let's keep this in control.
okay, so I think you're talking about with the cooperation where we were approached in trying to reduce this large
Right.
budget about giving up the Mountain View modulars. And I was involved in that discussion.
Right.
And the feeling was that Bruce Finney guaranteed us that the modulars could run another year,
Yeah.
even though we had publicized to the school committee that we were gonna get them replaced. And the agreement was that if we did that, I asked, well, I've gotta give something back to that community, and that's how the one-to-one developed.
Right.
So we said that here, in the spirit of cooperation, hold on the Mountain View modulars till next year, the 1.2 million, because it helps you with the budget.
Yeah.
But please give us something back so we can save face, I'm talking personally here with the
Yeah.
community, and that's how the one-to-one came about.
Right,
That's what-
and that's what we're saying, so I thank you for clarifying that. So,
Okay,
my discussion is still on the 100,000. So if we were to say, yeah, we're gonna give you 100,000, you would fund these 2 positions, which are really 140,000.
Right, correct.
So you would find a way to make that
No, we
work.
wouldn't
No, no,
fund
no.
it. No, the 100,000
It's going to technology.
Technology.
It's technology, Tom. The 100,000 going to technology, the one-to-one.
Right to the technology, to go to the one-to-one. That gets
Yeah,
us
but if it's-
one-to-one.
It
Prior,
says,
we were
it
not
says
talking.
social and emotional is 70 and 70 approximately. That's 140,000.
Yeah, that's separate.
But that's
I
separate
think-
from
I
the
think you're
argument
confusing
about
the Chromebook
the-
purchase,
the,
where we
um,
got the 100,000.
understanding to, yeah.
I wasn't talking about Chromebooks, I was
No,
talking
I
about
know,
the social
but that's
and
where they
emotional.
got the extra 100,000, that was the trade-off with the modulars.
Because we
Okay,
weren't
so you
requesting.
wanna do that,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but I think, but back to your point, Mr. O'Connor, I think it's important to know that in that, and I'm gonna say that Mr. Thompson and I have debated this many times as school committee members. I like to be creative. Mr. Thompson likes to go right by the book. So when you say, if you say to us, we're gonna give you 140,000, and I say, you know, Greg, if we do this, no, we're not, Rich. How will we look in front of town council and the public if we don't do exactly what they give us? So I'm telling you now, speaking not for Mr. Thompson, but if you give us that 140,000, it's exactly going to SEL
Well,
teachers, exactly.
But to your point, I think, we are the only autonomous board in the town,
That's
so
right.
it is the bottom line, and so our job is to give you justification on additional funding and tell you what we're gonna do, but in the end, we could do something else. I'm not saying that we're gonna do that, but if we're telling you here today, that if we go one-to-one with the 100,000, and if we fund the additional 140, we're gonna get 2 SEL
Absolutely.
professionals. I mean,
Yeah.
do we have the authority to switch that next week? Yes, we do. We're
We
the
have a
only
board.
board that can do that. That's the law.
That's the
not the
nature of
intent.
the,
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
so
So, no.
let's get on to something positive. I have a question. There's gonna be some retirements this year. And how does that affect your budget? Or losing those 7 staff members, or what will you realize from that? I know you have to hire replacements.
So in the budget, we always put a placeholder in there for each position. I believe masters
Masters
8. Master's 8 level, which I think is like 64,715.
Okay.
Don't quote me, it's something
Pretty sad
right
that you
around
know
there.
by the dollar that Ms.
Approximately.
Pamela, more or less.
So the replacement is already accounted for within our budget.
Right,
Yes.
so sometimes they come in a little higher, depending on the position, and sometimes a little under, but that's already taken into consideration in the budget process.
Yeah.
In
And I suppose it
Massachusetts-
depends where you're placing that teacher, what qualifications
That's
you're looking
correct.
for.
Correct.
Yes.
That's where I was
We
going.
talked
Right.
about that,
Yeah.
Superintendent. So the $2 million increase from, well, actually, it's not even $1 million increase from what was budgeted in fiscal 19 to this year. So I'm going to assume, and you correct me, this pretty much covers any increases that were given out to.
That's correct.
For salaries.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And to quote myself from last night, we did catch that perfect storm with the increase in the minimum wage with all our paras and lunch people and things like that.
You're stealing a quote from my final report.
Oh, I didn't use perfect storm.
No,
I know, I was just trying to
myself.
make the public understand, some
Yeah.
stuff comes at us whether we look for it or not.
mandated.
And every town's in the same boat in that regard.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
The only other item I just would like to remind everyone that is also being increased is the Medicaid reimbursement, which is from, the school department for special education, student
Services that come through the IEP, and then starting July 1st, the reimbursement will also include services that come through a 504 plan.
Oh,
So that has been increasingly
poor Jim. I don't know
grown
what she does.
over, say, the last 20 years,
Yeah.
to the point where I think last year, am I correct to say, it was around
$250,000.
Yeah, so, and that comes back to the town.
It comes back to the
It
general
goes to
fund.
Yes,
General
it does.
fund, yeah.
But over the last, I believe it's 5 years, it went up $100,000.
Really?
Yes, I have.
And those are
Substantial
documented
growth.
expenses of the school.
Yeah.
The money goes to general fund, but
It's
it's
because
the
our
real
services.
expenses at the school side, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Services like
Okay.
physical therapy, some speech services, I
Right.
believe.
Yeah.
Occupational therapy.
Occupational therapy, thank you.
And it also is going to include nursing
Services,
visits
yeah.
as of July 1st. So a lot is changing with that.
Wow.
The whole point of me saying this is that it has gone up significantly over the last 5 years,
Right.
and we anticipate it's going to go up additional monies. Because it's brand new, I can't really speculate an exact number, but.
You anticipate
I
getting
do.
more back?
I do, and
Okay,
I think
good.
that that's just another piece of the puzzle that should be looked at, because that number, that increase along with the Chapter 70 increase would cover our requests
Yeah.
for bringing the district forward.
Oh, that's a very interesting.
And as
Well,
just kind of an editorial on that, what Pam has just said just underscores how complex educating a kid is today.
Oh.
And the stuff that goes on inside the schoolhouse that we all went to is in a different galaxy.
Yeah.
We'd love to be coming forward, asking for additional math support, additional science support, and investing in education in itself. We can't do that because we have to ask for social emotional, and so
Yeah.
it has changed. We can't lose focus. If we end up not getting these positions, that we'll potentially have to look at cutting math and sciences and other things to fund these because they're that important.
Yeah.
The social emotional, we have to get on it.
We'll try to be
That's it.
proactive.
Every department has to prioritize,
Yep.
and
Correct.
and you are aware of the problems you're facing, so, and we can appreciate that.
Through the chair, I mean, our increase is 3.46, and we're in a unique situation in school department. I want to kind of pull together everything that's been said to the finance oversight committee, that if you add up the 828 from Chapter 70 and a Medicaid money for 250, it would more than fund what we were asking for. So in some ways, I can sum it up by saying that we don't need any town money. Give us the Chapter 70 money for this year, give us the Medicaid money for this year, and we're fine. I mean, this is a very unusual year to have that happen, that we can be funded completely for our increases with the Chapter 70 money and the Medicaid money. Unusual year, next year, that's probably not gonna be true, but for this year it is. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
So, I mean, just another way, remember, we're gonna be creative here today, because we know what you're up against, just a thought there. Because if, obviously, we don't fund our positions, then my question is gonna be, where did all our money go? Where did the 1.09 that we got from Chapter 70 Medicaid, must have went to other departments then? So that's a fair question that I would ask, that's all. You know?
Okay. Okay, very good. Well, thank you to all of you. We will deliberate on what you presented, take it very seriously.
Thank
Can
you.
I add just one thing? I know my friend very well because we argue all the time. Well, I know he's into FTEs. I just want to say that we're very conscious of what an FTE means.
Yeah.
And we know we're asking for 2 SCLs, and you can see that was to dominate our discussion. But if you could give us a little bit of leeway, we did take a bus drivers, 17.07 of them, and put them into the LPVC, so we gained 17 FTEs. So if you can just try to, any political point I can make to help our cause, I'm
To
trying.
balance it all. Okay.
And the other thing I just mentioned, we talked so much last night about the tax rate. Is it conceivable that the tax rate is a little bit inflated right now to be safe? If
Yes.
the number last night was a 2197, would it have changed the conversation altogether? And could it truly now be a 2197, and we're just being safe on it? And now, since the town is so healthy, I've been doing this now 11 years, this is the healthiest I've seen the town. There's a lot of years it's a lot thinner. This is a healthy situation for us. I would hate to not take advantage of a healthy situation just because of that number on a piece of paper last night. Scared everybody a little bit.
Well,
Scared
the
us.
tax rate
Scares us,
that's being promulgated is 2207 from the town manager's budget, which the current rate is $20.55. We have to recall that last year, everybody's value went up about 6%. So even though the rate dropped, people paid more in taxes. So we're coming off of that, people saw $400, $500, $600 increase, and now we're saying, okay, we're going to 2207, you're going up another $500 this year, possibly with the larger homes over $1,000. So I think that's why people are alarmed, those who are actually calculating and paying attention. So we're very mindful of that, and we're trying to think of creative ways to be able to reduce that number, because that's what people see. They see their tax bill.
So do you have a I asked the same question last night. Does this committee have a target you're shooting for? Because we know what that'll take to get to that target. I mean, it's an easy
Well,
calculation.
we certainly want to be below $22. And,
But that's my question as well, though. If
Yeah.
Sarah's number is a little bit high, if we were at 2197 last night, I know it's still a large increase, but
yeah.
would it have changed
Still.
the conversation? And could it, in reality, be 2197? She's just being cautious.
I didn't hear the portion about 2197.
I'm making that, I'm
Oh,
for example.
okay, you're pulling
No,
that
I'm just
one.
saying,
Yeah.
because if Sarah's being overly, or not overly, but just not
Conservative.
conservative,
Yeah.
if we really did the calculation and it ended up being 2197, 10 cents less,
Yeah,
does that change the conversation to say, maybe we can fund some FTEs? Because the way I heard it is, it looks like we need to cut around $1 million if we want to drop it 50 cents,
Yeah.
which means no new FTEs, level services across the board.
I won't say no new FTEs, because we have capital projects too that we are reconsidering. There's purchases on the books that, for other departments, that may be valid, and they've been presented by the town manager, but we're probably thinking, is this critical for this year? And we're looking at things, are they really necessary this year? And how often will that equipment be used? How, is that truck really necessary? Do we have to buy a new one? Can we get a second-hand one? These are the kind of things we're looking at. So that doesn't automatically mean that FTEs are gonna be eliminated completely. And so we're trying to take a little bit from everybody and try to satisfy the taxpayers.
And we're just receiving some of the documentation this morning, to be able to
Yeah.
hone in
From
on
other
this, so,
departments and such.
It's
Yeah.
been a moving target.
But to go to your initial question, does Sarah typically give us numbers or projections that are on the conservative side? In fairness, she has said that to us, that, and to be truthful, it's probably better to have someone figuring numbers conservatively versus liberally, and then something, a perfect storm blows through town.
Yeah.
And so she has said, even if we adopted without question a budget that said 2207, in all likelihood, when we get past July and they start or June 30th and they reconcile and look
Yeah.
at harder numbers, she says it most certainly will drop. How much? Hard to tell, because there's pieces in there that formula that I don't propose to understand,
That's
but
what I mean though, but again, so if the number was last night 21.97, 10 cents less, I think, and I don't know, maybe the conversation would have been the same, but I think what I'm asking is that we don't all overreact to that, to the people that showed up. I am a big proponent of doing things, staying within your budget, I understand all of that, but because of that conservativeness, did it change the conversation to say, all right, we're not gonna fund social emotional teachers in these schools because of that 10 cents that maybe not even there? I don't know, I'm just
No.
asking.
no.
No, because
from our-
there are other avenues to balance the budget
Okay.
without denying the school or denying another department. As you have set priorities, we have to do that as well. So, you know, and every bit of information you provide us is more than helpful.
We're here if you need us again.
Pardon?
Absolutely, we're here if you need us again.
Okay, okay, thank
you.
you, thank you very much.
Chris,
Thank
thank you so
very
much for everything.
Oh, you're welcome.
Mike, you take care.
You're welcome.
Thanks for
I hope
working
you get
time.
some sunny days.
Yeah.
So I'll see you, I think you were
You
trying
better
to do
start-
food, right?
Pops as soon as-
Yeah.
Easier for me to back up.
It's in my
Did you get
car.
all my?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Is Sarah not coming?
She
No.
had to go to a parks
State
seminar by
funding
the
grant,
state,
yeah.
who strongly
Very hard
recommended that the town show up
Yeah.
if they wanted to get the
No,
grant.
she brought in this morning, a sheet, finally, that tells us what the raise impacts are.
Oh, good.
On the 2020 budget. So it's not as bad as I thought it was. I mean, bad enough, but
So
but we gotta add that in.
what we asked Kathy, and I guess what I was hoping is that some of that big increase in salaries between our budget of 19 and our proposed budget of 20 was adjustments being made as a result of the Collins study. And was thinking, and maybe we could do it in 2 steps, 2 years instead of doing it all in 1 year, but I've now been told and understand that all of that adjustments, they were done last year.
Yeah,
So those salary adjustments are in 19's numbers, so
Already.
they do not contribute to the increases that we're seeing in
Okay.
the salaries,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
yeah, I kind of suspected that because of what had transpired, and I had asked the question about retroactive.
Yeah.
And,
This is unusual, and Greg is right to a certain degree. I'm so used to in appropriations barely being able to make the budget fit with just the 2.5% increase that we're allowed to property taxes, whereas, we're making it fit, and now we're trying to cut it down,
Yeah.
and the schools usually have had the biggest pressure increases in budgets.
Yeah,
And they're really one of the smallest ones, and the pressure is
Sure.
all in general government
I
and
know it.
public safety and, all these other items that's so unusual to see. But all in all, we're at a 6% increase in expenses, uses, so that just sounds high.
It sure does.
It is high,
It sure does, it
yeah.
is very high. What was I?
If I can,
Yeah,
Chris,
yes.
to Kathy, so what, part of what you also missed was,
Did you start at 10 and not 10:30?
Yes, it
Yeah.
was 10.
It was 10, you kept saying 10:30 last night.
Oh, and I had to, I'm sorry, I would have been here earlier.
so, what I asked for,
I didn't want to stand up.
You
and-
should have.
when was the money appropriated?
When
For,
was,
for the Collins Center's, monies to be handed out? And no one could recall.
in this October 2017, probably?
18.
Appropriated to give the raises, or?
Yes.
To fund
Yeah.
what the Collins Center recommends.
I think we did vote on that.
Well,
Yeah.
I've asked Jeannie to look into it, and she's going to do that in the minutes.
Yeah.
And we gotta have
I have a
vote.
recollection of a lump sum,
Yeah.
and I can't recall, I don't think it was outrageous, but it was at least double digits, thousands.
But that was last year's
It was in
appropriation.
This current fiscal
No, it
year.
wasn't this
This current.
October of 17.
Right.
I mean,
That's not
18.
this year.
Yeah.
It was inside the 19 fiscal year.
Right, so it shouldn't be reflective, it'll continue on to the
It's embedded
2020.
in, right.
It's embedded
Yeah.
in now with
But
the
all should
increase in
reflect
salaries.
your cost of living raises or whatever they got.
Right.
Yeah.
But I like to see that. I don't remember. I remember the presentation.
Somewhere it's the
briefly by Karen?
77,000 sticks out in my head. The presentation by Karen, but the appropriation for the money came, I believe, after Karen had left the employment of the district. Want to say October?
Late October, November?
Yeah, in the fall.
Yeah, okay,
So just
We
two
can dig
points on
that out
the
later, Gene,
schools.
yes.
One is, I'm not sure we have the extra 20,000 in our sources, because it looks like it's still 828.
Yeah, it's 848 now, it says.
So we could add that, and that will help reduce the overall, because that's not a real estate tax, that's a state revenue, so that'll just help us.
You talking about the Medicaid reimbursement?
Yeah, well, no,
No.
the 20,000
Chapter
that the
70.
governor
Oh,
changed.
the additional,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I think here it's still showing the April 29 proposed budget still has it at 828.
Yeah.
What page, Jim?
I think it was like one of the first pages, Kathy.
Oh, the chapter 78.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, 828.
So it
It's
seems like
really
we could get, that's just, that
plus
would just help us
20,000.
by 20. The other thing I guess I was wondering about, and, because it was troubling me with the building commissioner's position as well, is that we're getting revenue for those, but we can't reflect it because it's going to the general fund. So we still have to appropriate it in order to
Realize it, yeah.
Yeah.
realize it, but one thought would be to estimate what those numbers would be. Let's say that the increase in the Medicaid or what expense that the school expects to get, and the money that we expect to generate from the building department as a result of their position, and make an assumption that that would be a transfer of free cash to fund them in the operating budget, with the understanding that that's going into the general fund, but just indirect,
Yeah,
Yeah,
an indirect way of trying to
reduce the mill rate.
Recognize.
Yeah.
recognize that we're getting the money, it's
Yeah.
just not
Yes.
coming in that way.
Yeah.
Just
It also
the thought.
reduces the mill rate.
Right, exactly.
Which is,
And the numbers we're talking about basically would be permit fees flowing into the building department, which all we could try to do is speculate off the number of permits that possibly came in this summer. And then the second part of that would probably be fines from code enforcement. And the whole idea, the concept behind that was to be able to free up our building inspector
Right.
from sitting in the office for 4 hours every day, get him out on the road so that he can actually do what he was hired to do.
it's a dilemma. It's a dilemma, because we heard people last night calling for a hiring freeze and no new hires and no,
I
you
would
know,
just-
the jobs.
I would
and so
just
forth.
ask them, I mean, we have clarification. I mean, that position for the building department is going to bring revenue in.
Yeah, I mean,
And
based
from
on
the s-
their numbers that they supplied just for the previous year.
Based on the fact that part of the time he is kind of hamstrung and stuck
Yeah.
inside.
I mean,
Yeah, he's
I
not out
wouldn't
doing
have
his
a
work.
difficulty of assuming we're gonna
I-
at least wash.
gonna wash
that
it.
As long
cost.
as we
Right.
have an answer, I feel comfortable with it. And also, you don't want to pay a building inspector to do an administrative assistant's
Course
job.
not.
His talent would be
I
better
was gonna say,
recognized
he's
in
a
the
good
field.
one.
And, I mean, kind of like
He's a
what we're
good one.
hearing from the school department here. I look at what they're asking for is preventive maintenance. Going forward, we're probably gonna be able to offset some pretty healthy fees if these kids had to be outsourced. So we're trying to stay ahead of this before we get hit with those kind of
Yeah.
fees, which would be much more.
Well, let's stay on point. If we're gonna discuss education, let's stay on education and not ramble into building inspectors and so forth and so on. On the education piece, getting back possibly the 250,000 in Medicaid. Are we inclined then to fund 2 of those positions, not necessarily 3 of those positions, because they asked for technology, but we could certainly, I'm looking at what the cost is. If it's a social emotional learning, it's, I'm gonna round it up, $69,000 a year. So,
72, yeah.
Well,
that's
the-
$138,000.
And that's the salary.
Right.
Yeah.
The estimated benefits Or another 26,000.
So what's
Oh,
the
excuse
total?
me, 25,000.
Is that a paper that was handed out today? Or
No,
it's
this is
in my
one from way
file?
back,
Okay.
and I keep using it every
Okay,
single meeting.
that's fine.
Yeah, I do too.
It's been the best.
Oh, that one, yes, I have
yeah.
that, okay.
So
Yeah.
Jim, could you recite those numbers again, the two, and I can add them up? Was it
Well,
69?
the total is
69.
94,000.
230.
94,230 with benefits?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading up. Shut your mouth, Kathy.
194 with the benefits.
Okay. So you've added the benefits in the 69,000
From this sheet.
for a total of,
Yes, this is what Sarah had provided us, so it was the 69,000 and the estimate was 25,000 in
So that
benefits.
takes us up to 188,000.
And I wasn't sure how the is it Medicaid or
Medicaid.
Medicare.
Medicaid.
Medicare?
Medicaid.
Medicaid,
All right, sorry.
AID.
Were they saying they expect an increase?
In
of that-
reimbursement,
in that
yes.
reimbursement?
Because
Anticipates 200.
The government has stated that they're going to increase the percentage to schools.
Yeah,
All right. So that would be an increase in revenue to us, that would be going to the
that goes
general
into the
fund.
general fund.
But it's still coming back on the
Yes, yeah.
benefit of the school side, even though it's
Right.
buried in another ledger.
Yeah,
Well,
but
to the
it's not-
benefit of the
it's-
To the
town.
benefit of the town, yes.
Yeah, it's not money at their disposal.
No.
No, so, I don't know, I feel as though we're gonna start down a slippery slope. If we say okay on that, I read earlier, when the four of us were here, a letter from the IT department concerning, the full-time help desk administrator. Because it's graded a certain way, as I talked to Ryan last night about doing it on a part-time basis. It cannot work part-time. The
Because of
position-
union
No,
language?
because he has two full-time people reporting to him because of the grade that position
Ah.
is. It has to be an FTE. So,
And he has no other room to think outside the box on how that would,
he didn't offer any. I'm trying to find his letter. I read it earlier.
It's the grade that's requiring it to be a full.
Yeah.
Well, because he's got.
he's
Because
envisioned
According to
it
it.
as
Yeah.
kind of a intermediate supervisory kind
Yeah.
of position.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's
So
the
the
fact that
full-time
it needs to be
employees would-
full-time, not the fact that it's a higher grade.
It would be a because it is administrated, the techs would report to that position.
So the theory
as
is
well
he
as the
couldn't
summer
really have a
interns.
part-timer doing that.
No.
It's not that it was
But
just a
if I
higher grade.
hearing that, then I say, he's the director,
Yeah,
then this proposed position would be supervisory in nature
yes.
over 3 or 4 techs.
He said this position is a tier 2 support position, meaning that when our tier 1 techs have an issue they cannot resolve, it would get escalated to the help desk administrator. The 2 existing techs, as well as our 2 summer seasonal workers, will report to the help desk administrator. This is not the only responsibility. They will be also responsible for conducting training for staff on the programs we use, like Gmail, etc. This is probably one of the most important roles that we need to fill in IT. It is crucial with the deployment of one-on-one. I've always done my best to be fiscally responsible. An example of that is we are working hard to deploy a help desk here at the high school that will consist of students, and this will help offload some basic level tasks. This is not the first year we are requesting this position. IT, let's see, I requested a very similar position with a different title last year, which was approved in concept, just not funded. IT has made do with current staffing levels since 2003, while our responsibilities have almost quintupled. So when you think about it, they're transferring all the softwares from all the departments under his jurisdiction.
And
I mean, you
over
know,
the last, at least since the council, or this form of government's been in place, there's been a concerted effort to transfer responsibility for the software and for, or at least keep him in the loop on purchasing so that products are compatible and fit the profile he needs them to fit.
Right.
So we kind of pushed some other jobs on top of them.
Yeah.
I just wonder if there's a
So, Jim, on our wonderful little chart, what is the total cost of that IT?
The IT was a salary of 53,777, benefits of 25,000, so the total cost was 78,787, or figure 79,000.
And of course, I think what Sarah said, she, in estimating the benefits, she went on the high end.
Of course, the
So-
family
Yeah, the
package.
Family
Right,
package,
right.
yeah. So,
And I guess I'm assuming that she built that into the benefits expense line, or
yes,
so
Yeah.
that when these
I
come
mean-
out, if these come out,
She
she'd be
dropped that too.
adjusting those
yes.
expenses.
So there's gonna be ups and downs in that whole, her final adjustment depending on what the council votes.
What's the cost of the summer help? I know it's
It's like
minor.
$7,500.
Okay, so that
About
doesn't help.
4,000 each,
Yeah, yeah,
so $8,000.
yeah. And, the summer help, I think, is something that's really needed with the kids out of school.
It's
That's the
their
time to
absolutely
address-
heaviest time. They have to clean up every single one of those devices.
All right. So,
Well, personally, I'm torn in between the help desk administrator, because that's another function that a department head has done that's, they're delegating down to someone else. It's similar to some of the other requests that we've seen and some of the other requests that were filled in the past. We've got a department head at this level, and they're hiring all the staff below them to do functions that they were hired to do.
To some degree, and without using, I won't use names, but I believe there is an individual within the IT department who, in effect, is probably taking on this role right now. So I don't want to put words in Ryan's mouth, and I truly don't know, but I envision that this might go to one of the current employees who's had some standing in the employment
Right.
here. And then in reality, you're netting out another hands-on tech, is really what you're,
Right,
Yeah.
and that salary.
so
yeah,
you're thinking of promotion from within?
I would
I don't
hope
want to
so.
put words in his
But-
mouth, but I'm pretty certain there's one employee right now that's doing some of this stuff out of necessity,
Yeah,
But again, would have to be Ryan's call.
yeah, I just.
Whether it's an internal or not, you still have to go through the hiring practice as though it were a complete
For
stranger.
the
Yeah.
position.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm just struggling with the discussions last night, and I've been struggling with those full-time positions right along.
we are.
We're growing the government, and I hear the folks loud and clear last night.
Yeah,
Oh, it's loud and clear.
I'm
What's the-
concerned.
What's the downside of just sticking to your guns and saying half-time, take it or leave it? And if it's that compelling of an argument for you, figure out a different way to deploy, appoint someone from within to that level of leadership.
Yeah.
Sorry, Denise, I had to move them for, and figure it out on the inside.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we gotta be
Everybody's
very creative.
rationale makes sense.
Yeah.
No
It does.
department head
It does,
has given us
unfortunately.
irrational or illogical backup.
Right.
We get that.
Yeah.
But we also have to listen to what we heard last night. And none of us are probably surprised at the kind of things we heard. I frankly was appreciative of the fact that the audience made their point, but in a pretty respectful way, because, but I don't expect them to be that sympathetic next Tuesday. If we come barreling out and say,
Yeah,
this is the recommendation, and you're gonna just have to figure it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've been struggling, as all of us have.
And
We've
what
had this
I
discussion.
said to Mr. Fitzgerald out in the lobby, when I came in, tardy, was I was struck by the statement, because I had not thought about it in these terms. One of the speakers said, if you keep this tax rate at $22 and change, you force us to vote no on a new high school that we desperately need.
Yeah.
And I said to him, so Rich, we've signed on with you to a statement of interest.
Yeah,
And now we are putting a gun to the heads of the taxpayers to say, vote for it anyway, we don't care.
yeah.
Well said, yeah.
I mean, it was a simplistic statement by the woman, but I'd never thought about it in those
Yeah.
terms.
We're not gonna have the money to do
And I
that.
Oh,
said,
absolutely.
we're backed up against the wall now.
Yeah.
We can't back up and say to MSBA, sorry, changed our mind. Because the reality is, if it gets that far,
Yeah,
we're going to ask the citizens here to bond between $55 and $60 million.
yeah,
By the time we would get the nod, construction prices are gonna put a high school above 110 million.
I believe it. Yeah, well, if Long Meadow paid 85 million, several years ago.
We could build something that's even less than what Long Meadow has, but with construction going, I mean, we're killed before,
Well, that's it. If the state told you, would it be maybe 6 years?
oh, it's definitely 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, 5 to 7 years.
Before kids walk
So,
through the door.
You know, and if we keep escalating the general government portion of the budget, I mean, look at what's been spent on public safety in just 2 years. The town has invested over $1.6 million. Granted, we have a full-time fire department. We have more police officers on the street. We have an ambulance. But these things,
At some point, we
part
have
of
to
your
look
overhead.
at it and say, we have to slow down.
yes.
I think if I had to extrapolate from some of those remarks last night, they're saying, you know, don't get ahead of yourselves, i.e. us, because we have to still make do with what is coming into our homes. And you're funding like we just hit the lottery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm, being paraphrasing and being
yeah.
simplistic, but,
No, we heard it. You know, when you realize that young people that grew up in this town
Can't come
were
back and live.
educated in this town, and if they stay in this general area, can't afford to buy a home in this, and they go to places like Feeding Hills, like that mother said.
Mhm.
My daughter got married, she went to Feeding Hills, because she couldn't afford the taxes in East Long Meadow. And older people, the seniors, who can't, they're house rich, but they're cash
poor,
Poor.
right.
and they can't pay, $500 more this
I-
year, $500
we
more
have-
next year.
Both sides of the generational spectrum up against the wall.
Yeah,
And if you drive those seniors out, chances are they could
Well,
be
that's
replaced by
right.
people that tax our infrastructure even harder.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, because they'll bring.
a good
they'll have
chunk of
children.
these
There you go.
folks that are 70 or older that want to downsize and maybe get something a little more affordable in town, which truthfully doesn't exist. What they're
Right.
living in is probably as affordable as they're gonna get.
Right.
But if they were to sell their 3-bedroom, 7.5 room, whatever,
Yeah,
that is still a reasonable size home for a young family with 2, possibly more children coming in. And so, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith move out, Mr. and Mrs. Jones and family move in, 2 more plus into the school district, more cars on the highway. The wash is not even.
no, more demand for services.
Right.
Yeah. I want to continue with the school. Evidently, we're not going to make a firm decision today because we've got so many other departments that are asking for money. The school committee, I think we should vote on that. They asked for a 167% raise. At one point in our discussions, we said we'd give them a 25% raise. So instead of $11,250, we will grant them $8,500, which seems, a small increase, but if they do it in increments over a few years, then they can allocate it within themselves on how they pay the chairman of the committee and the other members.
Yeah.
Are we all in accord on that?
I am.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion to
yeah.
that effect?
So moved.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
For a second?
Okay,
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
s- I'll second it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
Okay. We only saved a little bit of money with that.
So that was
but
the
it's
8,500?
8,500,
And that's okay. They're the only other elected board in town.
yeah.
What was the initial ask? I forgot.
11,250, they wanted 167%.
Yeah.
So we'll give them 25% and they can come back next year, you know.
So 8,500 was the total, not the amount of
Yes.
increase.
Right, that's the amount allowed, so
Yeah.
we're basically, they were at 6750
Yeah.
this year. So it'll be
The cap
an
will be-
increase of 1,750 to be reallocated. Okay, done, that one. Put that on the floor. Okay, I did get something from Bruce on the, John Deere tractor. I'm taking it out of order, but, and I thought I'd pass it around. I have his email here. Basically, the cost is the same, so I think overall.
Versus leasing, is that the
Yes,
comparison?
yeah, so it,
The year-to-year
Pass it on.
cost is the same?
well, he's saying, yeah, that's the, he said this is the lease at 2750, some, 27,500.
Information, well, yeah, whatever. This was in.
I've been inhaling a lot.
Is that a lease? Can we clarify? Is that a lease?
It
with an
doesn't,
option
it
to
doesn't
buy, or
really
is it
say
lease to own,
lease.
You know?
Well, this is a lease to own
Yeah.
at 5.25% for 3 years, with 12 quarterly payments of $2,400.
12
So-
quarterly.
That's what it
I
states
can only
here.
assume it's gonna cost us more money down the road.
But the sale price is $23,193. 20. Equipment total, 27,000. Because he needs a cab to go on it, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is almost 4,000.
Yeah,
So it raises the price to $27,068.10.
yeah,
But
And it's 3 years?
it says here municipal lease, lease to own, 5.25% for 3 years with
All right.
12 quarterly payments. Will be about $2,421.78 per
So that'd
payment.
be 9,600 a year
and this is, yeah,
versus 27,000.
all at once.
Although, obviously, we're committing to 9,600 a year for
Yeah.
FY '21 and FY '22, but
Yeah,
it's not that much.
Yeah, it's not generally a good idea for like a small
yeah,
amount like that,
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
The bigger the price, like the ambulance and the fire truck,
this
well,
doesn't-
yeah, that makes sense to
Oh,
do.
Yeah.
sure, but
To-
a small, you're
First,
paying the
yeah.
interest on it and
It's not as bad as I thought, though.
Yeah,
'Cause,
but
I
this
mean, the
doesn't
total
address-
of payments is 28,800, and the total price was what, 27 something?
27,510 I've got.
Yeah,
is
but
the
it doesn't
request.
address the conversation we had, which was economies of scale. There's 3 pieces of equipment that were requested. What opportunities are there to go to the same manufacturer, if that's possible?
Well, like he said, he would have, the thing on the Bobcat, he would email me today on that, so
Yeah.
I have that for Friday. But you have different dealerships, mostly John Deere is John Deere and the Bobcat is,
Oh, understand, but they all sell that similar equipment, so it's
Yeah.
like buying a car. I don't have to
Oh,
get
I
a
see
Ford,
what
I can
you're
get a Chrysler. I
Yeah.
don't have to get a Chrysler, I can get a Chevy.
Well, when people talk about Bobcats, they're assuming that they're, that is a company, just like John Deere,
Yeah.
okay? Name brand, I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
if John Deere made a skid steer, which is really the name for that type of equipment, there are other companies
Yeah.
that sell
yeah,
skid steers. Bobcat is just a brand name.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I'm saying, so it's the same thing with you got a John Deere, you have the Bobcat. So again, they could be bought from the same company,
Yeah,
it's just.
well, you have a
yeah.
Caterpillar
Yeah,
skid steer that does
Yeah.
the same thing
Yeah.
Bobcat
Yeah.
does.
And hopefully that information is provided so we can compare that
yeah,
to see if it brings the cost down. I mean, if I buy one car, I'm gonna get one cost. If I buy 3 cars from the same dealer, I'm gonna get a much better cost.
yeah. I
So-
wish this had come up when we had Bruce here, because then that could have been mentioned to him.
I could ask him,
I saw him walk out about
Yeah.
5
And
minutes
I'm
ago.
curious too, this is the lease payment, but is there any money put down up front? that would add to the cost of it?
And I didn't really
Yeah, I
get a
think
chance to
it
look
was-
at that.
I don't know that. I do know that he's
Generally-
limited in the equipment that he's buying, in that, yeah, you can buy a Ford or a Chrysler, but you can't put Chrysler parts on a Ford. So, maybe that's a bad, I don't know if you, maybe you can do that, but.
Makes sense to me.
He has, pieces of accessory equipment that
Gotta be compatible.
he needs to have, the kind of equipment that he's looking for.
Well, that could be, because
Yeah.
that's what he's been using. He's been
And,
using a John Deere, so if he has additional
Parts that
parts
he.
that,
right, if there's a plow that goes on it, or
Yeah.
a, you know, or some kind
The
of bigger thing,
accessories.
or- yeah.
Yeah, that's fine, that's one piece though.
yeah,
Well, the
And
conversation with that is purchase versus lease, correct?
yeah, yeah.
That's it.
So, the other thing is that we go to whatever dealer, Combis,
That's
Combis
state
gives
buying.
us, that's the state, gives us the best,
It's not always the
prices.
best. I would disagree with that. I worked with combines for years and years. What happens is the state
Not
goes
as bad
out to
as I
bid,
thought it would be,
and they
no.
say, anybody interested in putting their name on this contract? And then they receive information packages from a lot of different vendors, and they say, I'm interested in getting on this, approximately, they give you a number, say $50 million state project, budget. Okay, so you participate. They say, okay, you two companies are the best, with the best pricing, so we're gonna let you both come on, and we're gonna put you on combine. So you're now gonna be an approved state vendor to sell at that determined price that the state negotiates, not the municipalities. So,
so the
So the
state
municipalities-
gets much better rate than.
no, I've gone out to bid. If you go out and do the 3-bid process, you can get better rates, because what happens is, over the years, they sign a 3 or 5 year commitment. In that 3 or 5 year commitment, they have to keep their price the same. Well, prices come up, prices go down, generally they go up. And I found that in some cases, the prices have come down because they're more competitive. So if you go through a 3-bid process, you can get a much better price, as you can if you just go out and say, give me what's on state contract at a set price. That's it. They can't negotiate.
That's
well-
counter to the
Okay.
theory then. that-
Correct.
Yeah.
So they say, no, this is the price, so they can't even negotiate with you. On combines, the state project, they can't negotiate
It's a
with you.
fixed price.
I don't
fixed
know-
price, end of
I don't
story.
know when you used it, Tom, but you can negotiate with them.
No, you cannot. You
I
cannot
know
negotiate the
that-
price.
I know that we can, because we do.
That's against state law.
It's
Well,
not.
Yes, it is.
For
You cannot
particular
negotiate
pieces-
something that's on state contract unless you go through a 3-bid closed process. I'm sorry, that's my experience, and that's what I've been told by the state procurement people.
Has that been recently?
Okay,
It's every year.
You've done that recently? Because we've done it recently.
I would be concerned over doing that.
It's-
I've been told you can't do that. It's either you go state bid and accept the bid, or you
I'm
go
not
out the
gonna argue
3-bid
with you.
process.
We
Yeah.
do do that.
yeah. Let's move on. Jim, I wanted to, on the general fund sources,
Yeah,
on the fiscal 2020 recommended, I think it would be possible to add a little bit more into the new growth. Having spoken to the
Yeah.
assessor, maybe, possibly another 50,000. I don't know if we wanna put that much in there, but I was assured there's not a lot going on, so. I don't know if you wanna use the 50.
I mean, it's rare that it's this low.
Yeah, well, we've had a
It is
couple of banner,
conservative.
last year was
Yeah.
a banner year, but
It's
I,
always conservative.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think 50,000 more would be considered unreasonable.
If you've talked to Diane about it.
yeah, I asked her.
She's the Bible.
Yeah,
Really. If she's comfortable with that,
okay.
I think that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, let's add 50 to that, see if that helps us.
So which one?
Fiscal 2020,
Sure, no,
projected
that'll
new
that'll
growth,
definitely
Yeah.
help, yeah.
instead of 200,000, mark it 250.
This one here?
250,000, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, last year, I guess, we had like 40 new homes. This year, so far,
Yeah.
they've had 9,
I mean, generally, when we were doing it, I mean,
yeah.
250 was about the lowest I'd seen as a
Yeah,
budget.
yeah. And consistently, the assessors are conservative.
Yes, yeah.
And,
But usually when they say, well, that's possible.
yeah, and it's hard for us because they can pick up the new growth through June 30th.
Right,
So, and she won't have that tabulated
Sure.
for into July, maybe August, I don't know. Okay,
the other, if you're on revenues, the other was like do we have a meals tax, right?
do we
Yes.
have a meals
Yeah,
tax of 1%?
0.75%, less than 1%.
Less than 1%?
0.75.
And I know that started, I think that generated, when it was implemented,
Yeah.
about 100,000 or something.
I was not aware of that.
And I'm just wondering how long it's been, because I think it went into effect when I was, at least the
Before-
last year or two
It was
that I was
town
on the
meeting.
appropriations
I remember
committee.
that coming up at town meeting.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was 0.75%.
Yeah, it's one of the few revenues that we have control over that is not paid necessarily by residents, it's paid by a
Consumers.
combination.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Consumers.
So how is that used? Is your question, or?
Well,
Yeah.
Where's
it
it show up?
goes,
Where
I
is it?
assume it
Where
goes
is
to the
it? Does it
general
Does it come into
fund.
the
Right.
general fund?
I,
I can go ask the tax collector right now if you want.
yeah.
Yeah, please.
Gives me a chance to go into sunshine.
So it's
Uh,
0.75.
Just so,
0.75.
just as when Denise came in,
Of the
Whatever
bill.
people pay when they go to Center Square Grill. You
Oh.
get your tab.
and embedded in that is your sales
Yeah,
tax,
you
your
get
meals
Sales
tax.
tax and your meals tax.
I haven't looked at it in a while, but I'm pretty confident that's the number.
But I don't know, I think they pay that directly to the state and the state sends it back
Yeah,
to
it might
the
be
town.
something.
Yes,
like
the
that.
vendor pays it to the state.
I
Yes.
always paid it to the state, Commonwealth of Mass.
Yeah.
is where the
Right,
meals
and
tax
then
is
the
paid.
state somehow uses their magic and sends back.
I didn't remember that rate, but that's something new.
Yeah,
Can I go back and clarify a number we spoke about? You wanted to know how much the council appropriated in the fall for, to bring the wage study
Yeah.
into, it's 87,702 and
Yep.
change.
So that was a vote that was taken?
Well, when Denise came in, I leaned over and asked her that, and she flipped through some document and said it's inside the package she gave us on the Collins study. So we did appropriate that in the
In the
fall.
Collins study?
From,
It's in
yes.
that packet?
Yes.
In
It's on the very-
October, I believe, of 18.
Yes.
Yeah.
She agreed, October of 18.
Okay.
thank you, Kathy.
So, I mean, we'd have to obviously look through to see if that funding has been used up, or is it,
Well, no, that's what's been paid out.
that's what was
Well,
appropriated?
she had to encumber it because she had to adjust all those salaries. That's, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
right.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's
so-
been paid out, but we had to
Yeah.
encumber it first.
Right.
Yeah. So as compared to this year, that was 87,702. Now the grand total here is, I'll just rough it out, 225,000. So you can see how when salary increases are given out, how they impact the following year.
Of course, 2% on 200,000 is one thing.
Yeah.
2% on 300,000 is something different.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
the
It
damage
really
it does
affects
down
your
the road.
overhead.
Yeah.
Really affects the
Yeah.
overhead.
If I may, while we're waiting for that number, and you and Jim lived this life in the past, but it sounded like it might have been new to you. What's this Medicaid payment? I wasn't even aware that
Oh,
we
I
got.
think he, when they made their, I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump in the question to you, but it was, Rich, when they made their presentation to the council,
Right.
mentioned it.
Yeah, but I don't know what does that mean?
It
It goes to the
means-
general fund?
It
Yes.
means that as it relates to
Special ed.
special ed services, some of child services, and again, every IEP is different, but is dependent on specific medical services.
Mhm.
And and I don't remember the history of when the Medicaid payments came into being, but each, it functions kind of like the circuit breaker, where once you reach a threshold of expenses,
Costs, yeah.
Yeah,
up above, you can get a piece back.
yeah,
It functions the same way for very specific clinical
Yeah,
services.
like they said.
Yeah.
Nursery,
Where does that show up?
Well, it doesn't because they spend the money out of the town budget,
Right.
and then apparently the reimbursement that comes through from the state is paid to the general fund.
It doesn't
And
go back to.
it's not something
So, for
I'm terribly
instance,
familiar with, because we only really started learning a little bit
Yeah, I
about it in
know,
the
it's
last
not-
couple of years.
Right,
Right.
but it's a fund that comes to the town, so where does it show up?
It doesn't, because it goes to the general fund,
It
it
would
would
probably
add to
come in
the
under
free
state aid.
cash
Yeah,
amount.
it would
But
show
it has
up
to show up somewhere.
under state aid.
I don't know,
State
because the
aid.
state aid is cherry sheet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I,
I don't
my
know the
assumption was
answer.
that it would be
Gordon and Pam could tell
coming
you.
from the state to the general fund in which case, we would not see it.
No, and.
And you have to expend the full cost of the IEP in the year you're servicing it. So let's say
Yeah.
a child's IEP is, because of the complexity of it, $75,000.
Yeah.
But
And there's a threshold, and we're above it, so the state determines by the Medicaid formula that they're sending back to the town 10,000.
Yeah,
Well, we've spent the 75 in FY19, it's not coming back, and Pam said it's almost a year beyond that.
Exactly.
So we'll see that 10,000 in 2021.
yeah.
If there's money on this ledger that shows from Medicaid, it's from FY17 probably.
Yeah.
yeah, and I
It doesn't show.
I don't.
Well, we don't know how it's,
Well,
she's
the
merged those
cherry sheet,
documents.
the cherry sheet might show it more clearly, but
Right.
Good.
it may be that it doesn't show. It's a good question to ask, because
There-
if it's
there
not
is-
on the sources, then theoretically it's
I
a
did-
back-end source.
Yeah.
Right.
I printed out a sheet from Department of Local Services when they came out with some estimates for 2020. And they had the school aid and they had another number, but that would be going directly to the school. So
Right.
it has to be coming into the treasurer's office because a lot of the state payments come in quarterly. I don't know, of course, Medicaid is the state and Medicare is the federal.
Correct.
So I don't know quite how that's paid out.
Well, while we're still on sources, I'm still not sure I know. I see in sources from the Community Preservation Fund for P&I payments, $106,000 as a source. But in the expenses, there's an amount for of $263,000 that seems to be included in our general fund expenses. It's page 10. Let's see, Community Preservation Fund, and it's $263,000. So, page 10. So, and it appears to be an expense that's a general fund use. And I guess I was under the impression
I
the
don't
Community
know.
Preservation Fund was a wash. Page 10,
Yeah,
but just under S&I debt,
okay, community preservation.
right, 263,
Well,
251,
they have to set
263.
us, yeah, that would be this would be, I think, an entirely different set of figures, because this is going, the 109, she's telling us this is going on principal and interest.
Right, that's
probably
being
on-
transferred from the fund balance.
Okay, yeah.
Is the way I understand that.
Right,
So the 1%, shouldn't it also be reflected as we collect 1%? Or is the property tax, I thought the
It's with the
1% was
property tax.
over and above.
It is, and it's
So
on your
where
tax
does it
bill.
where does it show here as revenue? I guess is what I'm asking, on page 3.
Yeah, that's similar to what my question is with that.
I think because it's a separate animal with all kinds of restrictions on it as far as the way the money can be spent, it doesn't show as revenue because
But we're
they can.
spending 263, we're collecting 263. Is it in the 42,778? But I thought it was exclusive. It was over and above the tax revenue. I
It
guess
is.
I'm still
I don't know.
confused where it is.
It is over and above the tax revenue.
So it's either in our 44 million tax levy or because otherwise, I mean, we shouldn't have an expense of 263 without a offsetting revenue, correct?
Yeah.
the way I understood how it worked.
Yeah. She's projecting the same amount to be realized.
And Denise may know that when she comes back. I just want to make sure I'm not,
Missing.
I can't really
CPC
tell.
is different, because then you have bonding projects under CPC too.
Yes,
they are.
sure.
Besides the projects being
Yeah.
paid straight out, then you have
Right.
balances that are still accruing.
Right, that's why usually it's all that tax stuff goes into the funds, and they have like several different funds, and then you transfer from that fund to
Right.
pay the bonding or the expenses. But then there's the collection of the
1%.
exclusive 1%.
What you'd have to do, there's a separate form for the community preservation reporting to the state.
Sure, yeah.
I bet if you went into the assessing department, you could get a copy of that.
Well,
Would you
I
feel
just
like-
don't know where the revenue is that's offsetting that $263,000 general fund use.
Yeah,
That's all.
yeah. Well, it's the 1% that comes from what we pay.
I
plus-
agree, but
plus
I
a
don't know
rebur-
where it is in
Yeah.
the numbers.
Plus an amount from the state.
Or
Right.
is it in the numbers? Yeah.
Well, I just want to
Yeah.
make sure it is somewhere in the
Right,
numbers.
that would be my
Yeah.
question. Is it in the numbers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next on the agenda. We took care of the John Deere, we took care of IT. That one. All right, do we want to review the positions? How do you want to attack this? Because we're getting down to
We're gonna have to do it sometime.
we're gonna get down to our deadline. Well, that's it. Do you want to revisit the capital projects that are contained in the town manager's budget now and see if there's anything that we thought was, let's see, that would be page 14.
I think the problem is I'm looking at last night's and the pages aren't numbered. so-
Oh, no,
Yeah.
and then I don't think it's as complete.
No, these pages aren't numbered either, but,
So it'll take me a minute just to find it.
so page 14 is,
Yeah, well, it's the town manager's fiscal 2020
It's-
capital request. Yeah. The landfill closure,
if you can, let me try to find that.
Sure.
Because it's not numbered.
It's from last night?
Tom,
Okay. So
You
I'm
should
working
have
off
it.
of my sheet, not
Yeah.
off of the new sheet.
which page are we headed for now?
14.
right?
14.
14.
what did you learn?
It
Is that the
is
first
a
one?
tax that we get back from the state, so we get a payment from the state,
Right.
we don't get it. Last year it was 260,000, and I would think it's under, others, no, it would be the other state. Sarah's at a,
Yeah.
grant
Yeah.
center,
Yeah,
so.
right. Because I think,
I'll ask her what it is, it was,
Yeah.
the income was 260,000
Yeah.
last year.
What's that?
And we're 3/4 way through the year this year. We've
Yeah.
gotten three
Right.
payments so far,
So-
190,000.
Okay.
because the question would be if we raised it a little bit,
Yeah.
what estimate would that be for an increase in other revenue?
I will, I'll ask that.
And is it, could you tell, was it 7/10 of a?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So it was 200 last year, 190 so far, 260?
Last year,
Oh, that's the meals tax.
Yeah,
and
90 to date.
190
To date.
through 3 payments.
Yes.
Yeah,
170 or 190?
190.
190, thank you. That's, it appears to be up. I mean, if you
Yeah.
break it down in quarters, yeah.
Well, we've got a lot of restaurants in town.
Yeah.
So, that's good. Okay. Are we ready to go on to the capital projects?
Yep. Health is first.
Health is first.
Yep, same
Yeah.
sheet, okay.
The 75,000, for the, Allen Street landfill closure. It it is gonna be a DEP requirement to cap that
Yeah,
at some time.
and-
You're
I'm
okay.
still thinking, and we need to at least show some kind of good faith effort to start.
Okay. The next two items, I think speak for themselves. They're the third year of leases on the ladder truck and the ambulance for the fire department.
I guess it's nice to think that we'll have that 310,000 or whatever free up for next year in terms of.
Well, the first one's a 5-year lease.
Oh.
Right. But the
So much
ambulance
for
will be
that,
done.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dream on.
It's
90,000.
92,000, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Will come out of the ambulance fund.
The cruiser replacement, well, that, and the original request was for 132,267, which was for the 2 cruisers and a truck. Manager's budget says 82,000, and we thought we had considered giving the $45,000 truck from casino mitigation money.
That price had come down though, right? From
It had come down from over
Right.
50,000, yeah,
it
so
was
that brings that line to
45,
100.
127, I think, is
127.
what we had said.
Yeah.
127,000.
Yes.
Mhm.
Asbestos removal for the school is the next item, changing the carpeting, addressing some mold, 24,162.
I was still okay with that.
That, I was okay with that. I don't think we need to vote. The information technology for the routers and the switch and the upgrades, he said a lot of them are becoming too old. I think we agreed with that
Mhm.
because Lord knows we depend on our technology. So, that didn't change. The Chromebooks, and that was the agreement made with the school committee, information technology, that's for the one-on-one program, for $300,000, and it was increased by $100,000 from the original draft budget. And it's gonna cover, he has 1,600 units now, it's gonna cover 2,100 units, and I think we were all in agreement with that.
I just had one quick question too.
Okay.
That was brought up at the meeting last night, and I just wanted to clarify. It is 2,100 units, and I believe it serviced grades 2 through 12.
Correct.
And there's a lot of people that didn't understand the number of grades that it actually
covers,
impacted,
yeah.
so.
I just had a question maybe for Denise, since you worked with the schools on this. So the net increase in the general fund capital projects for the schools was 80,000. The debt and interest, the debt service that was saved by deferring the modulars, I assume the 1.2 that we're gonna bond for
Right.
that debt service was like 80,000 a year less than,
I think it was,
all right, so the total was like a wash?
yes.
All right.
Okay, the John Deere tractor, we just discussed, everybody okay with that? The purchase of
Yeah, although I have to say,
27,500?
I was surprised, I mean, I don't think we're paying a horrible premium for the lease price.
Right.
You could twist my arm to do the
Yeah,
9,000
the
leasing.
year, yeah, that's negligible.
But I still think that purchasing seems to be more prudent.
Yeah.
It seems that way, but I still like the other information he was gonna provide.
He did, I think that's the
No,
best
for
one.
the other two devices.
Oh, for the others, okay,
I'm just looking at economies of scale. I mean, to Mike's point, a John Deere is only one manufacturer.
yeah.
Correct.
Bobcat's
Bobcat's
only one manufacturer, but they all make similar equipment. And is there an
Yeah.
opportunity to go to one and say, I've got three pieces of equipment I want to purchase, what are you gonna give me for pricing?
Yeah. Would
I'm
you-
just looking, I mean, even
Would
if
you
we say,
contact Bruce? Would you contact?
well, we did. in
Yeah,
our
I
meeting,
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know he's gonna get back to me on the Bobcat, but, is that the only one you have an interest in at this point in time?
Well, it's just that one. I don't wanna
Okay.
necessarily say yes or no on that one until we have
Okay.
feedback on the other two.
Yeah,
To
all
see
right,
how
we'll
they
suspend that
correlate.
one.
I would just like to add one piece on the Bobcat, and there is a reason that many people select that product, and it is because they're located in West Springfield. So service, parts, And if your unit went right down, they would probably bring another
Substitute.
unit right out there so you can continue working. So their location had, being in close proximity, had a lot to do with the
Yeah.
piece of equipment
I mean,
chosen. from
if
them.
I were to vote on, my opinion right now on the John Deere, I'd say yes, because I know that's a critical piece of equipment
Yeah.
to help with the fields in town.
Okay.
And without that piece of equipment, they're not gonna be able to aerate and fertilize
That's right,
and
rototill.
and rototill those play fields, which are, as we all know, and need to have some work done on
Yeah.
them.
So we're done with the John Deere, we're all in favor of that.
Yes.
correct?
So I'd say yes,
Should we
but-
take a vote on all that?
Yeah.
Although, what we've gone through so far, I'll entertain a motion on approving, or not necessarily approving, but recommending the following items to the council that have been presented by the town manager. So I'm gonna say it, and somebody can say, so
So
moved.
We will move it.
Recommended funding for the Allen Street landfill closure, $75,000. The payments on the fire ladder truck, fire ambulance, 100 at, let's see, the ladder truck at $214,787. The ambulance at $91,947. The police at $127,000 for vehicles. The asbestos removal for the high school, $24,162. Information technology, $70,122. Again, information technology to bring up to 2,100 units, 3 Chromebook devices for $300,000. Public Works equipment, the John Deere tractor at $27,510. Can I have a motion on that?
So moved with the understanding that the additional 45,000 of the 127,000 for the police cruisers would be funded by casino funds?
Mitigation.
Yeah,
Okay.
casino mitigation, right.
That's contained within the motion.
Yeah.
And I will second that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, let's move on to the next page. 3 different items for information technology. It was a substantial request, but it has been agreed to at least put $30,000 towards Chromebook replacements, student iPad replacements, and student MacBook replacements. And as well as staff MacBook replacements.
Yep.
Any questions on that? Information technology, phone upgrades. There are 175 phones in the system that are end of life. That amount is $38,107. Any discussion? The Public Works equipment, the Bobcat, we're awaiting information, so I will suspend that one and table it for now. The Public Works Highway, the annual sidewalk construction of $75,000.
So, I'll just throw out, this one obviously does benefit residents and can see it, but it is also something that doesn't necessarily have to be funded next year.
Right.
So it's a question of, priorities.
Yeah.
The other thing there.
I've been in favor of it, but it isn't something that,
And I don't know if the master plan for that segment is even
I
up
do
to date.
remember Tom Christensen, our deputy DPW guy. I think he's the point person for that,
Sure,
and
yeah.
he's written. The council took action to authorize him to go forward with the Complete Streets application, so we can get into that arena of towns that are moving toward complete streets. And I thought I understood him to say, once we're inside that arena, we would be, he could apply for some grant
Correct.
funds, so. Is that how you got it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean he's gonna get the first grant he writes, but we're in a better position there, and maybe that could be a revenue source.
Yeah. So not necessarily reimbursing this $75,000, but showing the town's intent to
Oh,
go
yeah.
Yeah.
forward with this,
But maybe
Denise?
if you think that it's something to look at, maybe you reduce it to 50. Now, whether it's 50 or 75, that doesn't do a lot of sidewalks.
No, it doesn't.
But over a couple of years,
It
you
can build
gather
up.
that money and then, do a bigger project possibly.
Yeah.
So to totally not fund it is probably not a great idea, because we really do need to address the sidewalks. There is, it reduces the amount of kids taking the bus, and there are a lot of residents that come in and ask about sidewalks. So
Yeah.
you're right, it's a tangible thing that the residents see. It's a
Yes.
benefit to everybody, but maybe reducing it is not
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah,
So we don't have specific locations for them as of yet either, correct?
They have a plan.
I meant to dig that out.
That's
Yeah,
what
I-
I
Let
meant.
me
I
get
thought
that.
that was in preliminary
Yeah.
stages,
I'll bring that
deciding where
Friday.
they might go.
Because
but-
there might be an argument for going like to 50.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean we couldn't go to 75 or 100 next year or the year after when there's more room in the budget, or
The
there's
grants.
a plan that needs to be
And we might have
funded. you know,
right, a
for-
better sense of
Yeah.
where our grant
Yeah.
opportunities lie.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, my experience with this has been that this has been going on for probably 8 years, 75,000. And Bruce doesn't do anything with 75,000. He usually accumulates monies and then spends it on a
On a-
much bigger section of.
right.
Of
Otherwise,
now.
it's not worth the labor to
Right,
put
and
into
you
it.
can't- 75,000 gets him very little, 150 got him a lot more.
Cement.
And I believe in our conversation, he said he expended the 150 he's accrued so far. So.
He's
those-
building again.
He needs to build again, so the 50,000 is a start, but,
So we all in favor of changing the 75 to
yeah,
50?
that's a good idea.
let's have a motion on that.
I
On
would-
that one
go ahead,
particular
Rick.
item, then I would say from page 15, under Public Works Highway, I'd make a motion to reduce the $75,000 figure to $50,000.
Okay.
Yeah,
Second.
so, yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, then the next one is the, for the Public Works, under their building division, the Town Hall trailer mount generator. Docking station included for $87,657. I heard a comment made by someone last evening,
Connor.
Young
Oh,
Connor
sitting
O'Shea.
Next to you,
Yeah.
Chris.
and he said, yes, that young man, that why are we investing that kind of money this year in something that's gonna stand idle most of the year?
Hmm.
So, I
So,
don't know how often these
I was on the
catastrophes-
capital, the town manager's capital budgeting
Yeah.
committee, and we approved this and recommended it. When I heard him say that,
Except you, when you have an emergency and when you need it.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, you
Yeah.
have to plan for emergencies, and that's
Yeah.
what this is for. And to say that the town hall is a non-essential is really not correct. And it might not be the town hall either.
Yeah.
Because it would be on wheels.
Yeah,
right, but I've agreed to all of that because I was a proponent of it, and yet at the same time, we've gone without it for a number of years.
Since 11.
And we haven't, you know,
Right.
it's all a question of timing. I still think it's a good thing to do. Would we die if we deferred it? If the worst happened next year, I'd be regretting myself,
yeah.
Well,
a million
We'll be
times.
calling.
But if nothing happened, next year we might have more room to buy it as opposed to, because it is coming right out of the general fund operating
Yeah.
budget. So I'm just throwing it out.
This is how I look at it.
Yeah.
If it were an emergency that affected more than just the building, and it affected people where we had to do some sheltering. You
Right.
have the senior center, and you have the middle school. They have their designated sheltering places, and they have operational generators.
Yeah.
You can make the rationale, I'm listening to Connor say that, if there's an emergency in this building as it relates to loss of power, can you, the converse is, is that compelling enough to spend the money now when we are scrambling to find ways to make the budget work and listen to the people?
Yeah,
I mean, I can, again, I'll just throw this out, from past experience, I've had plans, and ideally, it'd be nice to have a generator on property that sits around idle most of the year, but I've rented generators when I've had to for facilities that I've managed, in an extreme emergency. you go out and you call them up and they deliver a generator and you plug it in.
It seems to me
If that were the drop dead
Right.
requirement, but
Yeah.
I don't see it as a necessity.
I mean, I commend
think
the
it's good
public works
forward
manager and the town manager for building it in, because it's a good plan.
Yeah.
You know, the only
But it's
question
plan A,
is
plan B
to-
is.
It is good to be
defer.
prepared. I think that it comes down to a question, is it a critical purchase for this year? I'm only thinking of back in October of 2011, as Mike just stated, where, you know, the town was pretty much shut down, the whole area was shut down. I know I lost power for just about a week, so,
I understand in 2011, they used extension cords and all kinds of stuff to just keep the town all running.
yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
definitely not ideal. It was dangerous.
However, in 2011, and only because I lived it and lived there for 7 days, literally,
Yes, you,
At Birchland.
at Birchland.
You were good, you were landlord.
I was a good landlord. I was a jack of all trades that week. We shut down, or we commandeered the building's faculty dining room and turned it into an off-site town hall
yeah.
for all the essentials. The two chiefs worked out, it was the emergency command center, I should say it that way.
Okay.
And we had Carolyn Brennan worked out of there. I don't remember who from town hall might have been, whoever the select chairman was at the time. We
Yeah.
were all there. So there's ways to do it. If you're down for 2 days, does it impact accounting? And yes, of course it does. But
Yeah.
if we have to show some good faith to the voters here, then we've got to
Yeah,
maybe defer some things.
Yeah, there's plan B and C.
yeah. I'll entertain a motion to defer that purchase to a future year, if anyone will make,
So moved. Discussion.
yeah, second?
Second, I mean, I would hope and expect to see it on the capital request for next year.
Next year. yeah.
Okay,
I'm-
oh, so noted.
As it goes to that, I'm thinking back to shortly after the 2011 event when all towns were hypersensitive to, okay, we should probably rethink emergency preparedness. It seems to me that the police chief at the time was putting forward some paperwork to get a grant for a generator. Now, obviously it didn't materialize, but it leads me to wonder, are there grant monies out there under FEMA and MEMA to attract an opportunity?
I can check with
Yeah.
Yeah,
the fire chief.
I mean, there was a point in time when I was part of civil defense in town here where we did have a portable generator, and I'm sure it's outlived its life expectancy.
Yeah.
But we did have one, and it was part of civil defense, and it was stored up at the police department.
But you've rented facilities too, or your own facilities. I
But
mean,
don't forget, your buildings have to be able to
Compatible,
accommodate,
right.
accommodate that generator. That's
Yeah.
part
Right.
one is the generator, but you still have to decide what buildings, and then
Yes.
What
retrofit those
circuits.
panels so
Right.
that you can plug in.
exactly.
And in an emergency, if it's a big emergency like the 2011 or the tornado, there's a lot of people looking for the generators.
Oh,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
there's
I
a
mean,
real drain on.
that's why you contract ahead of time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I did. And so, I mean, I'm not in support of that.
Okay, all those in favor of deferring that, according to the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. And remember, we added to those.
The police
we didn't-
feasibility
I want to go
study.
back, yeah, but I want to
No,
go
sorry.
back and we didn't formally vote on the information
All right,
technology
I would-
amount of 30,000. The phone upgrades at 38,107. I'll entertain a motion on accepting
I would
those.
move to recommend the technology at 30,000 and the phone upgrades at 38,107.
And then reduction of the public highways sidewalks to 50,000.
And, yes, thank you,
Yes.
Tom. And the reduction of the sidewalk construction from 75 to 50,000.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so moved.
And I will second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, and we will defer the Bobcat. Now, we had added 2 items to
All right.
capital. The voting machines, I don't know if we're gonna do that in fiscal 19, in the current fiscal year with a separate vote, or if we put it on this, it could, we had done both the voting machines at 26,000 and the police building feasibility study at 25,000. Discussion was held on taking some of that money from free cash to support that $51,000 for those.
And I think the discussion was one or the other, but not necessarily both
Yeah.
from free cash. but-
Yeah. Going by what we have left and what we have in free cash and subtracting what we should have according to state calculations.
I did a little calculation.
Yeah.
Based on what Sarah gave us for the stabilization fund balance at 2,735,000 and the certified free cash through June 30th.
Yeah.
I assume it's certified through June 30th.
Correct.
And after that, it's
Yeah.
Yeah,
it has
we
to
gotta
be-
wait
yeah,
till
we
it's
have to wait
certified
for
again.
5 months till it
schedule.
raise.
of 2,738,000 gives us the total reserves of 5,474,000. I don't know how you look at it, Denise. We used to look at the total of those two as our basic reserves. And so that, against our $63 million budget is about 8.7%. So
Which is-
I don't know
Which
what
is
our,
what they were-
what our target is. I know
Yeah.
back when we were doing it was 5 to 9%.
Exactly.
And so it's not excessive, it's not 10% or
Right.
whatever, but it's also on the high end of the good.
Yeah.
So it'd all be a matter, I know there's been discussion of, I know Sarah has talked about the desire to do another substantial transfer
To the OPEB.
to OPEB. I think
Yeah.
she used the amount of $1 million.
That's usually what you.
What
Yeah. And that's a
usual.
good
She's a
idea.
vet.
That's a
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
good
thinking,
idea.
we, yeah.
So just for fun, I said, what if 6% were our bottom line? We wouldn't want to go below 6% reserves. Theoretically, the surplus reserves would be $1.7 million. You take out the million for the OPEB, the remaining surplus would be like 700,000. And that would be about 1.1. So that would be leaving us at 7.1.
Yeah.
So any difference between the 7.1 and the 6, that
Yeah.
amounts to 700,000.
Yeah. So taking the voting machines from free cash, but leaving the feasibility study in on the capital to be raised by taxation.
Could be done either way, I
Yeah.
assume, but
How did-
I'd prefer free cash. I think.
For both of them?
Yeah, we're
Just
still-
get it off the
sure.
record, just
Yeah.
buy it
It's
and
a
have the
small
receipt.
amount. It's,
They're
I mean,
little
it's significant,
expenses.
but it's
Yeah.
little compared to some of our other costs, and it helps reduce the tax load.
How do you feel about it, Mike?
I would just like to clarify the cost for the voting machines again.
26,000.
It's right here,
1,000.
okay, that's a correct number.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 26 for the machines and 25 for the
Correct.
For
feasibility
the
Yeah.
study.
study, so 51,000.
51,000, yeah.
Mhm.
Do you feel as though we should put one on taxation and one from free cash? I guess that's the question before us, or do take both of them, it's 51,000, and if we have some leeway in keeping the, I'll call it the savings account, and providing for, putting money aside for the other, post-employment benefits.
Mhm.
And we'd still, have emergency funds for the town. 51,000, I mean, it's one or the other. I would take the 51,000.
I would
for
too, I was
cash.
just gonna say,
Get rid of
maybe
it.
we can clarify that our free cash still remains very healthy with these two products
Yeah.
taking out.
It does, I mean,
Is everybody on that same page
Yeah.
where it remains healthy?
yeah.
Yeah,
oh yeah, I
So-
think
And these
with
are-
just these two coming
yeah,
out.
I mean, these aren't gonna be recurring expenses. Once these are taken care of, they're done with. There'll be no tapping savings for it. I'll entertain a motion then to add those to capital expenditures with the fundings that we've discussed.
And I'll move that motion.
Okay,
Well,
Wait a
to be
minute.
paid from free cash.
To be-
both of them from
Correct.
free
Yeah.
cash.
Voting
50.
machines and feasibility
Yeah.
Right,
study.
total of $51,000.
That'll be our recommendation. Any further discussion? Did I get a second on that?
We
Yeah.
did not, did we?
Well,
I moved it.
I second.
Okay.
There we go. So we need to vote.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That kind of takes care of the capital. I think all other capital is within the enterprise funds and,
And bond.
yeah, and
Yep.
bonding. And I think we can put that to bed.
On the, I don't remember what page, wait a minute, I'll find it. The enterprise fund for stormwater, page 18. I recollect at least two comments about why do we have to buy a brand-new vehicle for the F-250 truck with the utility body for the stormwater foreman to use. And I absolutely understand the concept of the stormwater. Is the foreman an individual who is more driven by work at a desk? Or is he out in the field all the time? Because that would sway my thinking.
They'll be doing a lot of testing
Yeah.
Well,
in the field.
Okay.
our discussion on that, there was more based on the fact that this is a new process, not starting until after July 1st. He's been doing it now with his existing resources, and once the funds are in after July 1st, as he stated, he could purchase this.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when we met with Bruce, he said that he wouldn't be doing any, he could order it.
It wouldn't come anyway, it doesn't
but
come the
wouldn't
next
come
day like
until
we're ordering a
October,
car.
And by then he'd have the money.
So that will take care of itself,
That'll
take care
of
but in
itself.
due time, not
Right.
for
Yes.
July 1,
Right.
right?
And it's, yeah, it sounded like the foreman would be on the road.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair.
Yes, he said to
They'll be
different
testing
sites,
equipment.
and he stipulated that this
Is
type
that the
of
one he
truck-
could use for a plow when he got
Exactly.
jammed up? Okay.
Exactly, so it will be just not used for stormwater, it will be used for other purposes.
It'll be out of that fund, so it'll be
So-
off the tax roll,
Yeah, so I think we're
Perfect.
okay with that.
or at least the mill rate,
Yeah,
still a tax, but.
yeah, it won't hit the tax rate. All right, seeing that it's noontime,
Yeah.
and I gave you agendas for Friday, so I think maybe Friday we can address the line item budgets and the requested positions and kind of wrap this up.
Yeah.
What's Wednesday? What's
Monday at
Wednesday's?
10:30
What are we trying to do then?
on
On the
Friday,
20th?
on the 17th.
Yes.
I've got final recommendations on line item budgets. We actually covered it today on final recommendations on capital projects.
So,
We will review any revised worksheet that you put together
right, and then so we'll cover positions and
and line
budget.
items.
Line
All right.
Yes.
Should I
Good plan.
make a list of unless I can ask Denise about the community preservation
Yeah.
fund money?
Yeah.
She's here now, yeah.
Denise, I was trying to figure out there's a line item for expenses for the community preservation fund of $263,000 as a general fund use. Where is that offset by the revenue that we collect for the community preservation fund?
I don't know.
I couldn't figure out
Yeah.
where it is.
I'll find out.
Okay.
I thought it all was a separate fund.
Yeah, but that's why I was kind of surprised to see it as a $263,000 expense on the general fund. And I think it was I forget what page, it was near the end. Page,
8 has the,
Indeed.
Is it 18?
it's page
20?
10
Oh, page
of
10.
your April 29th package. It's right under, about midway down the page, right under S, snow and ice deficit.
Yeah, I see it.
So I wasn't sure, since I know we collected specifically, where the 263 in revenue that we collect shows that offsets that.
Yeah, I'll ask that
Okay.
question, because I,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'll actually try to take the stuff that we've voted on
Yeah,
and
Good.
update. And then
reassemble.
I'll give it to you and you can distribute it in however you see fit.
Okay, very good. Well, we'll probably have another hour and a half to 2 hours on Friday.
And that's at 10 o'clock?
That's
I
at
don't
10
wanna be
o'clock,
tardy
not
again.
10:30, Kathleen.
Jeez, and I was.
I should have stood up, I
You
just
should've-
didn't, I didn't
I
wanna.
said 10:30
Are
on
we
camera,
getting-
it was really
are we
tough.
getting some
I show
of
up,
those?
oh, yeah, I'm thinking I'm doing myself a favor, oh, it's 10:15,
so
oh, they're already
That's
meeting.
what Jim's gonna do for Friday. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Second.
All right, aye.
Aye.